What's up everybody, Maik Wiedenbach back giving tips on this Monday, tips about blood work. How should you read your blood work? Well, first of all, you should get some blood work done, because if you're not, you're just being irresponsible, especially if you're an enhanced athlete. So, blood work for athletes, especially if the doctor doesn't know bodybuilding or is not in the know that you are one of the greatest bodybuilders of all times, can be a lot of false positives. So it starts with the blood pressure, right? For a lot of people, the measurement device is too small, so it jacks up the pressure, right? So you get a reading of 9 to 8 points high, and they're like, oh, you need a blood pressure, you need some sort of a beta blocker, which will leave you then fatigued and so on and so forth. So that's something to take into account. And then there's a couple areas where athletes just have different readings, but by the same token, what I want to achieve in this video is also that you don't say like, oh, well, yeah, I'm higher in X because I bodybuild. There can still be a horrible thing lurking underneath, okay? So, the first one is pretty easy, is creatinine, which is the byproduct of the creatine production, in the body, which basically can be elevated, and it will show like if you're having a kidney disease or a failure, but you're actually not, you might just be taking creatine, right? So you explain it to your doctor, and he's probably gonna give you a speech about that, but he needs to know. Then there's BUN, blood urine nitrogen. So the urine output in the blood can also be higher. It doesn't mean you have kidney failure or you're going into rhamnolysis or anything like that. It just means you trained the day before. So there can be a reading that's about 10 times higher than a normal person. By normal I mean who doesn't train. Then there is creatine kinase, which in my notes I put down as basically a really high level that can show like that you have a heart attack or kidney failure, and also can be related to training, but it needs to be seen over time. Then there's the liver. So AST, ALT are always elevated when training. They're also elevated when using oral steroids. So a lot of people say, I'm just training. Well, if they're a little bit higher, you're probably going to be okay. If they're chronically higher, there can be inflammation and even cirrhosis. So me taking lithium, my AST levels are always elevated. And they have been for the last 6-7 years. So that's something to monitor. And if you feel it's just your training, then you take a couple of days off, you come back to the test, and the test will show that your liver values are normal. But I feel a lot of guys are sort of BSing themselves, simply chalking up the liver values to the training when it's not just the training. Wink, wink. See what I have next. Yeah, total proteins in the body. So there's albumin, which basically is an indication of liver activity, and globulin, which is for immuno activities. So albumin is higher in trainees, and it's a lot higher when people are using steroids. So the total amount of protein is higher. So that doesn't mean you have liver failure per se, but you should tell your doctor about your extracurricular activities if that is what you're doing. Because if you're not honest to him, then he can't treat you. And I know what the laws in the country you're at, also that gets reported, but you have to put your own health first. That's very important. Cholesterol. Normally training has a positive effect on cholesterol unless you're taking drugs. Then the HDH goes low and the LDL goes high, which makes you candidate for heart failure. Which leads me to the next point. The big one is the red blood cell count. So training increases red blood cells, but in a healthy way. But if you go into the 55 and even 60% range, you are basically to the point where there's a ketchup bottle that you're squeezing really, really hard into a tiny, tiny, tiny straw, and guess what? The straw ain't gonna make it, but that straw is your order. So if your levels are that high that you're like 55 or higher, you have to immediately draw blood, donate blood, and lower the dosage. Because think about it, like a lot of guys that have died last year without naming names, their livers were enlarged, but where did they die from? Heart failure, okay? Heart attack. So the red blood cell count is what matters. And then there's testosterone. So there's free testosterone, there's total testosterone. So they always give you total testosterone, and your total testosterone will tell you absolutely nothing, because the body can only handle the free testosterone or the ASPH, sexual hormone like globulin. That to measure is difficult. So the total test you take with a grain of salt. Obviously, if you're using drugs, will be greatly elevated. That's a conversation you have with your doctor. But by the same token, if you're dieting very strict as a natural athlete, it can be also very, very low, which can also be indicative of certain problems. So blood work will be differently for you as a trainee, whether natural or not natural. But especially if you're enhanced, do not chalk everything up to training and yes, I will be okay, because you won't be, okay? There are consequences, especially when it comes to the heart health. So I urge you to take it seriously. First of all, get blood work done, monthly if you can. And secondly, read it properly, and if needs be, retest it. If your liver values are high and you think it's training, take a couple of days off, retest. If they come down, great, it was the training. If not, there might be a problem. Okay guys, stay safe, Mike out.